Good morning, good evening, good day, whatever it is, wherever you are, welcome to another episode of The Shindig. We're so glad to be back. I got two phenomenal guests today, good friends of mine. I got Kaz and Aynie Townsend sitting with me. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Having a good day so far?
Yes.
It's Super Bowl Sunday. Does that mean anything?
Not really.
No.
Don't tell my parents.
Well, for today, I just want to get to know you, Kaz, a little bit more, because you're a very interesting person.
Yes.
Yes, I've invaded your home a lot to take over band practice with your dad and invade your Dungeons & Dragons group. So, unfortunately, you've had to see a lot of me.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate.
I agree. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's going on with you? So many attributes that you want to share.
I play guitar.
You do? Why do you play guitar? When did you start playing guitar?
When? Like a couple years ago, maybe 2020.
Why did you want to learn how to play guitar?
I was bored in quarantine, nothing to do.
How's it going? You like it?
Yeah. I'm actually in a band with two of my friends.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the name of your band?
Forsaken Souls.
Like, what kind of music do you play?
All kinds. Mostly we're just doing covers for now, but we're working on our own songs.
What's one cover that you do?
We are doing Clint Eastwood by the Gorillaz.
Look at that. A band starting today is doing a song that is... God, that came out when I was in high school. That song's about 20 years old now. Well, tell me about your name, Kaz, because that wasn't your name when I met you. Where did that come from?
In 6th grade, I was reading a book for school, and one of the characters' names was Kaz. So I took it and made it mine.
How long have you been going by Kaz?
About a year or two, I'd say.
Was it hard to get people to start calling you that after you chose that name?
Not really. I made my dad give me a nickel every time he messed up. I got like $50 from that, I think.
So when you decided to go by Kaz, how'd you tell your mom and dad?
I messaged them at 3 a.m, telling them about it, and then after it, I told them that we needed more yeast for pizza dough.
That's a good segue. So what, you just like texted them from your bedroom? What'd they say back? What was their text back?
This one came in my room, woke me up, and was like, "So what does this mean?"
Well, you didn't send a text that said, "By the way, my name's Kaz."
What was your recollection of it?
So there were stages. This did not happen in one go. Like, Kaz didn't say, "Hey, Mom, by the way, I'm transgender." That's not kind of how it went.
Okay.
So, do you remember the Daft Punk Technologic video where it's got like the little, like the hands that has like the words and...
No, I don't.
I'll have to show that to you because that's important.
Okay.
But I'm working and it's like 4:45. I get off in 15 minutes and Kaz comes in the room and it's like, I need to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. And so he has like this little hand thing and it's like, touch the top of my hand. And so I touch the top of his hand and he opens it and then it's like flip my hand over, look at my left hand and like do all these different things. And at the end of it, it says, "I like boys and girls." And I said, okay. And he kind of looked at me and gave me a hug and said, "Thank you for accepting me." I'm like, "You're my kid. Of course I accept you. Like, what's the problem here?"
Sure.
And
and then like this, there's something else here, right? Like, what did you break? What did you do?
Right. I'm like, and what's next? And he says, "Will you tell Dad?" And I said, "Okay." And so I told Chris, and Chris was like, "Okay." And like, where's the problem? Like, where's the part that I need to have? And so that's kind of how it started.
Okay.
And that was not a big deal for us. And Kaz, I think, felt supported at that time, and it obviously was something that might not have been easy to say, but I think you knew that we would accept it well, because we did kind of talk about that.
So after you did your presentation, how'd you feel about it with your parents' reaction?
Cool. I think I went to play games on my Xbox afterwards.
Was it what you were expecting them to say?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice. Did you you had a flair for the dramatic? You're like, I need to make this cool.
Yeah.
So what's life been like since then?
Pretty normal.
Nothing different? Like, it was just, like, you're just something about me, and then life was fine? It's exactly the same as it was?
Pretty much, yeah.
How did you tell your friends? Did you tell them the same way?
No, most of them already knew, I think.
What'd they say? Or how'd they react?
They're just like, cool.
That's awesome.
Seeing the reaction of the kids around each other, it's not a big deal. You know, it's like some of them feel the same way, some of them feel completely different, but they all kind of just mesh into this group that it doesn't matter. And why should it, really?
Exactly.
Like, I'm envisioning that conversation with my parents back in be roughly the early 2000s, and I don't think it would have gone that way. I think it would have gone a lot differently. But I'm glad that it can now just be, hey, this is me. And I was like, yeah, and cool, awesome. So after you got that news, what did you do next?
So the first reveal, I don't think there was really anything to prepare for. When he started talking about the name change, that was when there was some different language happening. And at that point, he had said, I'm non-binary, which means I don't associate with either male or female, or not strongly with one or the other, that it's a very gender fluid feeling. And that the term non-binary can mean something very different for different people. So just because Kaz's experience was that doesn't mean that everyone else's is going to be the same.
Just real quick. So when you chose that specific label, what did that mean to you?
I just didn't feel like very attached to either gender. Like now I do identify as a trans male, but back then I did not.
So I've struggled a lot just because that concept is so foreign to me. Can you elaborate? Can you explain that in any other way?
I'll explain it with food. Like,
Okay.
let's say that someone gives you an option between like pizza and donuts, and you're just like, oh, I don't really like either of those. I'd rather just like sit here with a glass of water.
I like that. That's simple to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So at first you identified as non-binary, and now you identify as trans male. What was that process? How'd you get from one to the other?
I'd started experimenting with like different pronouns and stuff, and I felt that male ones suited me better.
When you chose Kaz, which I'm guessing that's not a name most people go by, and when I first heard that, I had no idea if that was a male or female name.
Yeah.
But it was pretty quick that I learned that it was a male name. So you mentioned your dad paid you a lot of money.
Yes.
Struggling with those pronouns. So and you said it just felt right at that time, right? Yeah. And how did you handle switching names and pronouns?
One of the first things that I did was I tried to do some research, because I had an idea of what non-binary meant, and I had a better idea of what transgender was, but that, came a little bit later. And I found a group on Facebook called Educating Caregivers of Trans and Non-Binary People. And it was really, really helpful. It's not a support group. They're very, very clear. It's if you're feeling wounded because your child isn't who you thought they were, this is not the place to go.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking for honest education from transgender and non-binary people, it's a really good resource. And so I landed in this group, and one of the things that I found was a lot of statistics on the suicide rates of transgender and non-binary people.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, the suicide rate was about 60%. I tried to find that study today and I couldn't find it, but I did find one that was published in Forbes magazine in 2021, and it was focused on 35,000 people from 2020. Transgender, non-binary people. And of that, there was 52% of the 35,000 people ages 13 to 24 had seriously considered or attempted suicide in 2020. And that is insane.
That's absolutely insane.
Absolutely insane. And one of the part of that same study said that the transgender and non-binary youth reported a 50% reduction of suicide attempts when their names and pronouns were respected by the people that they live with. So that's not even necessarily their parents. It could be because of the younger age, but it's just the people that they live with supporting who they are. And I found that terrifying that there are people out there that can't support their children, even if they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like that was like my mama bear moment, that I was like, this is unreal. Like, we'd support our kid, of course, but seeing those numbers, I'm like, there's no way I wouldn't support my kid or anyone else that is feeling the same way.
That's sensible. And lowest common denominator, least amount of effort, saying a pronoun.
Right.
I mean, the study that you quoted has showed that there's significant impacts of just that.
Of just that alone. And that's not even, that's me calling you Kaz.
Yeah.
That's not even the extra support of trying to help you in any other way that I can. And, it breaks my heart to think that there's other people out there that don't get that same support. And Kaz actually has friends that don't get that same support.
Yeah.
And
I think that most of my friends actually don't.
You don't think your friends get that same level of support?
No, I know that like 3 of my friends have came out and none of their parents call them their preferred name.
How do you see that impacting them compared to your experience?
It'd probably make them feel like they don't respect them.
How do you interact with your friends knowing that they're not getting the same level of support that you do?
I just support them either way, and if they're already out to their parents, like one of my friends, the one that's at our house currently, you know them, their mom doesn't call them their actual name, like their preferred name, so I just do that even around their parents because they're fine with me doing that, just to like let their parents know that this is their name, and that
they're being supported.
Yeah.
Reinforcing that in the best way that you can.
Yeah.
Right. And we always respect, Chris and I both respect the kids at our house with what they want to be called, regardless of their support level at home. And I don't do that out of respect for anyone but the kid, that, at least they know that there are adults out there that can support them. I know it's not the same as, your mom or your dad, but...
Well, I'm sure it has a significant impact.
Hopefully.
So, apart from, a good support system, what other groundwork did you have to do to adjust?
There actually were and still are a couple things that are uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do with Kaz. It's about the environment that we live in. So, as an example, at Kaz's school, the teachers can call him Kaz. He has a file that has the name Kaz on it. That's not a problem.
Okay.
But when he goes on a field trip and I have to fill out the paperwork, I have to write his full name given at birth.
Yeah.
And the sex given at birth as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I wish I didn't have to do that. I wish that wasn't part of, that process, because they know him as Kaz at the school. If they see this form, they're not going to know who that is.
That could cause problems.
So that could cause problems, but that's a little uncomfortable. And there's things like that, like going to the doctor. It's a medical file. It's the same thing. You have to, use the name given at birth. And I don't like to have to do that because I feel like I'm not being as supportive as I can. Mm-hmm. But it's the law, so I don't really have a choice. And I don't think we're at the legal name change stage.
Also need money for that.
It is expensive.
I imagine that it is.
I did, when I was doing my research, Kaz used the food analogy, and I found another one that somebody mentioned in regards to going from one thing to another thing, like from non-binary to transgender. And this person said, it's kind of like trying on a pair of jeans, where some of them are too big and some of them are too small and some of them fit right, but then you grow, as a person, or from a child to an adult, and they don't fit anymore, so you have to upgrade them or get new ones or change them. And that really resonated with me, because I think as a person, I had to try on different things throughout my life to see what worked for me and who I was. So I don't think that this is a whole lot different.
I like that you went there, because I feel like everybody on some level can connect to growing as a person and trying to define who you are, regardless of what terms that is.
Right.
Yeah, like when I was in college, looking back, I would define myself as an asshole at that time. And I feel like I eventually tried on a couple different hats. That's the phrase that Crystal and I like to use. And, till you find one that fits and you start to be comfortable with who you are.
But it's still on the same level of identifying. I mean, you have a lot of things that create your identity. It's not just your gender. It's not just one thing or the other.
Kaz, do you ever get the feeling outside of your support system that when people know this about you, that they try to reduce you to that characteristic?
Sometimes. Some people do and some people don't. Like, one of my teachers who is in charge of the GSA club.
What's the GSA club?
Gay Straight Alliance, basically just like helping people out, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
He basically, how do I say this? He thinks of us as people, but also as like we are transgender and that's what we are only.
How does that make you feel?
It doesn't really affect me much because it doesn't like it's his opinion, so.
I'm trying to imagine that on my side where, like, if I just told people that I identify as a straight male and that's the only thing that they saw me as, it's hard to, because that's not generationally, that's not how our society works. But just trying to put myself in that headspace, I feel like that might help me be a little more empathetic. I think it's so easy for somebody of my demographic to get wrapped up into that being quote unquote what's considered normal or the standard, that it's harder to venture out and try to be empathetic to things that could be different for other people.
Right.
So it takes a little mental effort, and it's definitely worth doing. Let's kind of round it out here. So I'm going to go back and forth here. I'm going to start with you, Kaz. So tell me 2 things that you would like people to know about how to interact with transgender people.
Well, first I'd say it's like ask their pronouns and what they're comfortable using, like compliments, like handsome or pretty. Like ask if they're comfortable with that, and try to respect their and make sure that if they're not out to their parents, then don't like out them. It's like don't use their preferred name in front of their parents because that could put them in harm.
That's a very fair point. How do you feel emotionally when somebody uses the wrong pronoun? Like maybe at first versus if they refuse to use the correct one and then continue to use the wrong one.
At first, I just like tell them, hey, that's not what I go by. If they continue doing it, I remind them again. And if they tell me that they just don't care, then I feel a little disrespected. But I also switch up sometimes to call them the wrong pronoun.
I like that.
It's like they get a taste of their own medicine.
How do they react when you do that?
They kind of look at me confused.
That's the perfect answer, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I go into my office and somebody calls me Tim, I'm like, well, name's Ben. And they're like, no, you look like a Tim.
Today.
I probably don't talk to that person much after that.
I'd call them some other kind of name that is not theirs.
We talked for a while on how we were going to let people know and like what that was going to look like. Mm-hmm. And we decided, Chris and I and Kaz, very quickly that if somebody was not going to be supportive, they will not be a part of his life. That we support him, and I don't care if you understand it or not, but you will respect the pronouns and the name. And obviously we'll give you some chances to mess up because it is a change, but think of it like when somebody gets married, do you repeatedly call them the wife the wrong name? Or do you think to yourself, oh, they got married, that her last name has changed, and now I'm going to call her the right name? It's not really any more difficult than that unless you're bringing your own baggage into it and it's not about you.
Yeah, the level of effort is minimal.
The level of effort is minimal. So that was, another thing that there was a risk of people being removed from his life. But thankfully, everyone has been very supportive. Even the ones we weren't sure about have made a true effort to understand and be supportive. So we are very lucky.
I'm sure you had some reservations when you were thinking about your, giving this information to your social circle or your family, there had to be at least a few people you're like, how are they going to take this?
I think you and Crystal were one of the first people we told.
That you would question how we would take it?
No. You were like one of the absolute first people that we said anything to. You and then, obviously the family that we have here were the first ones to know. And I think everyone took that very well. And that was very helpful for us because that made it easier for us to tell the extended family.
I have to imagine that not everybody has that same good experience with that, families in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to empathize with people that don't find it that easy to do or that supportive.
Right. And that's where I go back to those studies that, I understand that this type of, I don't even know what to say. I mean, it's not a lifestyle. Like, that's not the right word. But if you are in the life of somebody that is transgender or non-binary, it is harmful to not respect them and the feelings that they're having. And it's not about you. Again, it's not about you. And I always go back to those studies when, like, he's got a friend that the mom texted me and said, I don't know why they want to go by these names. And I don't know why she this, she that, she this, she that. And I responded back with, then 60% of transgender and non-binary people are at risk for suicide. And she didn't say anything.
Like nothing.
Nothing. Like, she didn't respond to that. To my knowledge, she is still not supporting her kid, even having that information or hearing that information and having the ability to go, look up her own facts and her own studies. And
is there any other advice that you would give to parents of somebody whose child identifies as transgender?
Love your child and know your child. I mean, to be honest, this was not a surprise to me.
No?
So
Wait, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
It was not a surprise. I don't know how to explain it, but it really wasn't a surprise. I mean, there were some things like, can I go back to like before you?
Yeah.
Kaz really, really liked stilettos and glittery dresses. And like that part, so does Ben. Can I say
Honestly,
that on
I'll say it. Yes. I loved playing dress up.
But
I
you
still love
do.
playing dress up, yeah.
You still do. I mean, how many times have we seen Ben in Crystal's clothes?
Too many times.
A lot.
But I think you're absolutely right. That can't be a unique experience to you as a parent. Parents know their kids pretty well.
Right.
So I'm sure, when this conversation came up, at least part of you, if not most of you, was like, okay, yeah, that just fits in line with sort of what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a surprise to you, knowing that your parents probably weren't that surprised?
Yes.
Why? Why do you think that was?
I always wore like dresses and heels and stuff. Like even though I did go out and like in my neighborhood, I only hung out with the guys because there was like no girls there.
Mm-hmm.
So
you thought you were like busting out this huge bombshell. Your parents were like, okay.
yeah.
You were also very athletic in like a stereotypical sort of way, though.
I was?
Yeah. Like you always were. You didn't want to hang out. Like I played with your Monster High dolls more than you did. And I do preface that it is stereotypical, but you kind of tended more towards masculinity at an early age also.
The reason that I wanted to talk to you, is because you're good friends of ours, and I just enjoy hanging out with you, but last time Crystal and I, took a journey back to Iowa, where we're from, and we were sitting around with our family, and they have kids roughly your age, and those kids were having a hard time where at school there were a few people that they know that were trying to figure out their identity as well. And I think they were trying to get information about what that means, but at the same time, as kids are wont to do, being kind of defensive about it. So, right. Maybe coming across as less than accepting, but they really seemed like they wanted to understand that. Crystal and I did our best to try to put the facts out of it. We are not the right people to speak to that. Let's say you run into somebody that really just doesn't understand the concept of gender identity. What would you say to that person?
I'd probably pull out my phone or their phone and like search up the definition, show it to them, and if they have any more questions, I'll just like explain the best I can.
Do you think it's your job to explain that to people?
No, but it's helpful to like let them know.
I think that's a healthy attitude because it's, I was going to say,
Why does it matter? So if Kaz meets someone that doesn't understand, is Kaz hurting that person? No. Is it his job to make them treat him with respect? Not really. But, if people have this idea that somebody that's transgender or non-binary or different is hurting them or hurting society or hurting people that they love, and my kid is not hurting anyone. At this stage, why does it matter?
We get so wrapped up in things like this. That's the only question you have to ask.
Is it hurting you or someone
Yeah.
else? No.
For me and for Crystal, when we were processing this information, we came to the conclusion, like, the only thing we have to do is try to use a different name and a different pronoun. If we can't do that, then we really need to reconsider our own level of effort.
Right.
It's not that difficult.
It's not that difficult. I had one thing that I did want to mention was people that do have questions.
Yes.
There's a website called genderspectrum.org that is gender sensitive and inclusive for children and teens. So if they want some more education, they have some questions, they don't know where to go to ask, that might be a good resource to look at.
Plug that one more time.
It is genderspectrum.org.
Genderspectrum.org.
And it is specifically for children and teens. So it's going to be at a level that's understandable to children and teens.
I also have another website.
Yes.
It's for like non-binary or trans masculine people. They sell binders and like swimsuits and stuff. It's called gc2b.co.
gc2b.co.
Yes.
Is that the numeral 2 or like the letters?
Yeah, numero 2.
Okay.
that's something that you didn't touch on that I think is important.
Binders?
Not binders specifically, but body image.
Oh, yeah.
We can talk about that.
When you look at those suicide rates, and I know I talked a lot about
The not being supported as being, a big contributor to that. I think the other contributor is, as someone that is identifying with a gender that was not assigned at their birth, looking at your own body can be traumatic and can cause pain.
Sure.
Gender dysmorphia is a real thing. And
yeah.
Like, for me, I personally like to buy men's clothing because it makes, like, my frame look more, like, I guess, masculine. Like, during the Boy Scout thing, I ordered a men's uniform instead of females because that just make me look like a rectangle.
Do you have any education you'd like to say about binding?
Don't keep it on for, I'd say 10 hours is the absolute max. Don't exercise in it, and if you do, then buy a size up.
This is like body binding.
do your research before you decide that that's something for you. The website that Kaz plugged is a really good one.
Okay.
But there are people that have permanently damaged parts of their bodies by binding improperly.
Mm.
So that's why I was saying that's something I think we probably should talk about, because that's a pretty hefty topic.
Sure.
But
GC2B is kind of, it's a little expensive, so I believe that there's another
But
website.
that one is one that is validated to be good and
Yeah. It definitely
not harmful.
do not get any from Amazon. Those ones are horrible. And do not get any with like zippers or clips, because those distribute like pressure unevenly.
Okay.
But there was one, tomboyx.com.
Yeah, that one is a good one too.
Yeah, that's another one I looked at.
GC2B and tomboyx.com.
so that gender spectrum site is probably going to talk about the body dysmorphia and how to help with that, because that's kind of a big deal.
Did you struggle with that?
A little bit. Not very much, though. I know that some of my friends do.
How do you support them as they're going through that?
I do buy them binders and like masculine or feminine clothing, depending on what they identify as.
if anyone is curious about these topics or going through something like this and struggling with that, definitely access the resources that Kaz and Annie plugged here today. And just know you're loved. You absolutely are. People in the world will accept you. Some people won't. But we're going to try to do our best to spread a little more love and a little less hate. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I hope you have a fantastic day wherever you are. And thanks for listening to the Shindig. We'll catch you later.
Bye.